We'll take any questions should there be any.
Reverend Butts, to what degree is you think that the federal government is ignoring this problem? I mean, why do you need this HR 1964?
We need the HR 1964 because I think that most people, not just the government, have focused their attention on the HIV/AIDS epidemic, even though we know it has moved on the white gay community, white gay male community. And all the resources have been focused in that direction. But the real center of the disease has shifted. Matter of fact, we have some evidence to suggest that it was never really centered in the white gay male community. But it has really been identified as being devastating among African American women of childbearing age and our teenage to young adult population. And I think that we need to have our lawmakers and policymakers understand that we need desperately the resources to save lives in the African American community. And legislation ensures that. We don't need a strategy. We've got a strategy. We know what to do. In fact, you have men and women around in this room now who have been doing it for 20 years. We know what to do, but we need the resources so that we can get the job done. I think that the federal government does understand. These men and women who have signed on to the legislation are some of our best minds in the country. This is the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust. They are physicians who serve here. So I think that what we're doing now is making sure that with legislation the resources go into the right place and making sure that the nation understands that we're losing lives in genocidal proportions in the African American community. Yes, sir.
Congressman, Mr. Chairman, Rangel, please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Reverend Butts and others have spoken about how passage of Maine health care legislation would be complementary, even essential to the effects of 1964. As one of the legendary handicappers, how do you see it? How do you see health care progressing this weekend?
There's no question in my mind that God will prevail and we will win.
Thank you. One more question.
What is NBLCA prepared to do for churches that are reluctant to get involved with AIDS and needle exchange and ministries of that sort? What are you prepared to do to get them involved?
For many years, I was chairperson of our National Replication Project. And what we did, because many of the ministers, as Congresswoman Waters pointed out, were not involved, we traveled the country. We have affiliates in Detroit, Nassau County, Long Island, Baltimore, Maryland, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Georgia. We travel the country and meet with ministers. One of the things that I have to my advantage as being chair, and what we have is we have the head of foreign missions for the National Baptist Convention, home mission for the National Baptist, the chairman of foreign missions for the National Baptist Convention. We have ministers like Reverend Deborah Hickman, who was near me a few moments ago, and who are Gail Holness here in Washington, D.C., the Council of Churches. We have Sully Robinson. We have the Evangelical Church here, D. Darrell Griffin, men and women of great status and character. We have Dr. Johnny Ray Youngblood, who's traveled this nation organizing and energizing black men. When we go and make an appeal, because many of us have been enlightened, and so when we go to make an appeal, now our brothers and sisters hear us, and the numbers of men and women who are joining in this fight continue to grow. So what do? It's almost like a campaign. You go door to door, and you sit down and you talk with your brothers and sisters, and what you discover is that most of them have someone in their families, if it is not them themselves, who have been infected or affected by HIV/AIDS. So our struggle will not end with the passage of 1964. Just as when these men and women make sure, here comes Congressman Adolphus Towns out of Brooklyn. Just as when these men and women make sure that comprehensive health care reform takes its first step, it will pass. It will pass. And as it takes its first step, They're not finished. They have to continue to work. And we're not finished. We have to continue to work. So that's how we'll do it. And we've been successful. What you see here represents a small number of the men and women across this nation who are organized behind this effort.
Pastor,
Yes.
Deborah Howe was here when we got our first funding.
Oh, yes.
She has been working in the vineyards for so many years now. I just wanted to mention how grateful and appreciative I am for her and the work that she does.
We all are. We all are. We recognize her as our founder. But now if we don't have any more questions from the press.
There's also there's a split on the health care bill, on the Senate health care bill over abortion with a group of Catholic bishops finding it very hard to get. And nurses are coming out in favor today. So I wonder if you can comment on that.
I cannot comment on it. I saw the nurses group coming out. But you know something? A lot of long and hard thought and prayer. I know women in our church who have had an abortion. I've sat with them and prayed with them. The decision is ultimately theirs. This is so complex and involves so much deep spiritual angst and so much theological debate. I would dare not try to embrace that subject in a brief few moments in a press conference. I don't think any of us really know the absolute answer. And one thing I've admired about our president is that he has been one who has been able to bring people who have been so far apart together. And I'm willing to engage in that conversation, but I think it would never be fully comprehended or understood in just a soundbite. And so I would defer from responding. Say that again?
But overall, you'd like the bill?
Overall, I certainly want this bill to pass. Because what this bill means is that Americans, by virtue of our humanity and our citizenship, will be able to get the health care we deserve. And we will not to be at the mercy of people who will just cut us off. There's so many things in the bill that protects us, and it is about all of us, and most of us, because it really is about poor people. And the one thing I'm absolutely sure of in this very room today is that if I address my comments and this health bill addresses its focus on poor people, it captures everybody. Because there are only a handful of Americans who rise in that rarefied air above poverty. We may think we're doing fine, but when you really take a look at it, white or black, we are all working very hard, and it is not fair for the fat cats to treat us like they do. And I think health care reform will be one way that we can begin to equalize, level off the playing field.